10, still here, that's all me. Black love 2D. Damn.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our final breakout sessions of the summit. My name is Grace Kirk. I'm the tech moderator for this session, so please shoot me something in the chat if you have any tech difficulties. I can help you out. But I'm here with our amazing presenters. We have another presenter joining us who will be here shortly, but our ones on screen now are Asha Starks from SPARK and Aimée-Josiane Powell-Ingabire from Midwest Academy. And our other presenter who will be joining us shortly is Kristina Tendilla, also from Midwest Academy. I will pass it over to Aimée to begin the session.
Thank you, and greetings, everybody. My name is Aimée-Josiane. I use they, them pronouns. I live in Fulton County, in Fairburn, to be precise, and I'm a trainer with the Midwest Academy. We are a training institute that for almost 50 years has been training grassroots organizers across the country to build their capacity to organize around strategic campaigns that make concrete wins in people's lives and that also help people become committed to the long-term struggle for justice. I'm excited to talk about organizing with y'all. I'm gonna kick it to Asha to introduce herself before we get started.
Hey y'all, I am Asha Starks. I am the community organizer for SPARK Reproductive Justice NOW, located in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia, and my pronouns are she, hers. SPARK is an org that is very centered to the liberation of queer and gender expansive folks. And I'm really excited to tell y'all how we do organizing at SPARK.
Awesome. So I'm gonna share my screen. Hey y'all, hey Rula, and Asha and I, and then my colleague Chris, when they join, are gonna move us through a conversation about organizing and why we organize. What is the role of organizing in actually changing the conditions for our people? So y'all see the chat. Encourage y'all to utilize the chat. But we want to invite you to just share a little bit about what brings you to this space today. If you were part of this event yesterday as well, what is bringing you to this space? Put that in the chat as you and reflect on it and put in the chat as I move through the rest of these intro slides. All right, so this is going to be a session of dialogue. You're going to hear a lot from myself and Chris about organizing, and you're going to hear some real on-the-ground examples and experiences from Asha and the work that SPARK RJ is doing. We're going to talk about what is organizing, and then we're going to also distinguish between strategy and tactics and why it's important at this time, at this precise moment in history, to be strategic and not just tactical with our organizing. And then we're going to talk about base building, because organizing is recognizing that our primary source of power is people. So we need to be clear that base building is our pathway to power. And then we're going to wrap up the session with some concrete opportunities for y'all to take action in the fight for reproductive justice in Georgia. So first thing I want to do is invite folks to reflect wherever you are, wherever you're receiving this information. Just reflect on organizing, direct action organizing, but you can just think organizing simply. What are 5 words or phrases that are key to your definition of organizing? Just want to invite folks to share 5 words or phrases that are in your definition of organizing? I'm just checking the chat. Okay, Sierra, new to organizing, looking to learn, build connections. Great. You got Decatur in the house. Looking for tips to begin organizing a group. Then we got Crystal giving us some key words for organizing: community, power, care. Beautiful. Okay. Great. Folks still sharing what brings them to their space. All right. So let me go back to my screen and share with y'all. I'll share a little bit. I've been an organizer for over a decade. I started organizing professionally about exactly 10 years ago. Before that, I was part of a lot of activist collectives that studied together, that went to actions together, that did a lot of cultural work together. But organizing, what I've come to learn is that it's something that's very precise. And so I'm going to offer a definition for organizing that we use at the Midwest Academy. This is not the only definition of organizing, but it's one that we want to offer because it's specific. It's specific around certain points. So we say that organizing is the process by which people impacted by injustice take collective action to build power, to win meaningful change in their lives and communities, and transform our society. Organizing often involves making demands in order to win changes in policy, practice, and resource distribution made by decision makers of public or private institutions. It is fundamentally about justice, grassroots democracy, and self-determination. So let that definition land a little bit. And I want you to pay attention to the words that are highlighted in green, because what's really important about this definition is which people we are centering. And we say that the ones who are impacted by the injustice should be at the center because it's most important for them to take collective action. And that we're taking collective action specifically to build power, because making meaningful changes in our society does take power, and organizing is about building power. In the second sentence, we also put in green that organizing is about changing practices and resource distributions and policies, and that all of these changes are made by decision makers of public and private institutions. So organizing is about how we build power in order to influence and really push those decision makers to meet our demands. And then in the final sentence, we're talking about justice and grassroots democracy and self-determination. We put those words in there to really help organizers think about the fact that we need to have a vision. What does justice look like? How do we practice grassroots democracy by creating organizations that practice that and model it? How do we put self-determination at the center of how we organize? So just want to offer this definition before we move on, because y'all are gonna get to hear from Asha about what this looks like in real life on the ground. I'll pass it to you, Asha.
Hey. Thank you. All right, so some things that we've been doing when it comes to organizing. So there's been a shift since the pandemic on the approach with how we organize and relationship build. And we have moved towards a more digital organizing, doing a lot of relationship building individually. And so that looks like text messages, that looks like phone calls, that looks like virtual one-on-ones, that looks like meeting up in person. We've had a few events and series, Black Sanctuary, which has been in person. And it was a space for folks to have conversations around politics and more specifically abortion. And it was specifically for Black, queer, trans, and gender expansive folks. We've had Camp Fire, Fire Camp, which is a media justice camp. And we give our campers the tools to be able to move whatever campaign they're working on or idea to a digital platform. It's also been a space for folks to build a deeper leadership role with the organization. Folks have the opportunity to come back and be peer leaders for the camp, and it's really cool. I started off as a fire camper, and now I'm an organizer for SPARK. And so we're really working on building long-term relationships with grassroots leaders and the infrastructure so that we can connect our leaders to the campaign work through house parties, phone banks, canvases, and then we are building and growing our base at the same time that we're moving our campaign work. Thank you, Aimée.
All right, had to get myself off mute. Let me just check the chat. Hear from a couple of folks. Okay. Great. So I shared a little bit that we, in organizing, we aim to distinguish between strategy and tactics. And that's because we think of strategy, again, in a very specific way. It is that overall plan that an organization uses based on a careful power analysis to make a public official or another kind of decision maker agree to your goal or to your demand. So I'll just be honest, when I started organizing and people would say, do you have a strategy for how you're going to win, what you want to win? I would say, well, yeah, we're going to march. We're going to march. That's what we're going to do. We're going to march. We're going to put pressure. They're going to see the march. They're going to be overwhelmed. They being a decision maker, and they're going to give us what we want. But I have, found out through trial and error and a lot of losses that a strategy is a lot more than that march. And so when we say the overall plan, we're going to share a tool in a little bit that goes through how do we formulate that plan and how do we actually build this thing called the power analysis, something that organizers talk about a lot. We think of a power analysis as really being research to clearly define what it is that you're working with, what it is that you need to build, and what kind of power you're actually building in order to get what you want. So strategy, we're going to talk a lot about. And then tactics, we think of tactics as actions that carry out your plan and that are intended to demonstrate power to the decision maker. Tactics are the actions that we do to get a decision maker to say yes to us. And oftentimes you'll see people, get to those tactics that are like a hunger strike or something that is very, very escalated. And we generally don't want to get to those kinds of tactics until we have done multiple actions trying to get a lawmaker or somebody in the private sector to give us what we want. When they say no, we escalate on our tactic. So we're going to talk about how we actually come to figure all of that out in a way that is also shared amongst the group. What I have on the screen here is the Midwest Academy strategy chart. It is a chart that has been used for decades. It was pulled together by organizers that took lessons from the civil rights movement, from the women's liberation movement, from the student anti-war movements of the 60s and 70s, and figured out that by putting everything onto a chart and by answering some questions together, we can come up with a shared strategy, and we can do it in a way that's democratic and collaborative. So our strategy chart is these 5 columns right here: goals, your target decision maker, organizational considerations, constituents and ally, also called that people power, and then the last column is tactics, because we say that you don't get to your tactics until you have answered every other column. And the reason why is that the goals, the target, the organizational considerations, and the constituents and allies, those 4 columns help us build up our power analysis. And I'm going to tell you how. With our goal, we're thinking about the long-term visionary goal. What is it that we want the society to look like when we have won everything that we're trying to win? That intermediate goal is our campaign goal. We want to defend abortion, but how? Through what policy? Through what measure? That's what we want to clarify. And then our short-term goal is the action that we want a decision maker to take. So if we want to pass a policy, we might need a decision maker to introduce that policy. That is what we would put down in our goals column. Our policy is to get Representative Smith to introduce this legislation in 2023. And based on who we name in our goals column as our short-term goal, we're going to do research on that decision maker. So immediately this chart, which I think is brilliant, forces a group to work strategically by targeting one decision maker at a time. And we do that because in order to create a strong power analysis, we have to recognize that every decision maker is going to be pushed by something different. In general, people who are elected to office care about votes and money. But how many votes and where the money comes from is going to be unique to every individual elected official or candidate. So it's important when we're doing our research in this target column that we're doing research on a specific decision maker. If they are elected, how much did they win their last election by? Where are they getting their money? What messages are they championing? Who's voting for them, etc. And we look at that information side by side with the third column, which is all about ourselves, our own group. So we might have an idea of what the decision maker cares about. And then we got to look at our group and say, do we have people in that decision maker's district? Do we have people in Representative Smith's district? Okay, we don't? Fine. And then we're going to go look at what we need. Well, we need to grow our base in Representative Smith's district. And then there might be some conflicts. Maybe Representative Smith's district is extremely segregated. And so we want to notice, hey, we're going to have some potential conflicts because we are trying to reach out to a base that might include people who are extremely racist and might even be violent towards the members of our organization that are reaching out to them. So that organizational considerations column is really our way to begin to say, okay, we have an idea of what kind of power we need to get in terms of the number of people that we need to get together to push Representative Smith. What do we have to work with? Do we have the power that it takes? And oftentimes, y'all, we don't have the power that it takes at the beginning of a campaign. We often don't have the people power that we need to win at the beginning of a campaign. And that's why we're going to go over to the fourth column and really talk about our people power. Who do we need to bring into our base to have the people power that is going to make the decision maker give us what we want? So we're going to name our members, the people who are most impacted. Who are those people? How are they organized? How do we bring them into the campaign? We might think about allies. Who are the organizations that care about our issues enough that they're going to join us, or that they are going to share their resources and help us grow our people power? That's what allies do. And we might also want to just keep an eye on our opponents. Who are they? What are they up to? They're trying to come for us. But not really spend a lot of time, because opponents serve to distract us. They can't give us what we want. And the more time we spend arguing with people who are not in those decision-making decisions, that are not lawmakers, then the more of our time and our life's energy we're putting into people that ultimately don't have the power to give us what we want. All right, now, after we've answered all the questions in all four of these columns, that's when we get to our tactics. And we think of our tactics in two ways. Tactics are the activities that build awareness and energize our base. So they're building awareness, they're energizing our base. People are getting high, people want to be part of a change. And our tactics also have the challenge of being directed at targets in ways that push them to say yes to us. And what we mean by that is that a petition, which is a very simple tactic for people to bring up, for a petition to be most effective, then we want to make sure that the petition is directed at a single decision maker. And then we also want to like Representative Smith. And then we also want to make sure that in that petition, we have a way of communicating to Representative Smith that people who are signing the petition are actually in their district. Because, I'm in Fairburn. So if I sign a petition that's targeting the mayor of Atlanta and I'm putting Fairburn down as my address, he don't care. I can't vote for him. It doesn't matter if I agree with what the demand is. I'm not part of the base that can actually hold the decision maker accountable. So we want to be strategic about our tactics and not just say, hey, let's just do a petition just because, but let's use this tactic in a way that's actually going to show our decision maker that we are building the kind of power that can actually present consequences to you. And that's what makes a tactic powerful part of our strategy. So I'm gonna pause there because I said a whole lot before passing it to Asha, and just gonna check to see if there are any questions. Also, my colleague, Chris, is here, so wanna invite you to introduce yourself.
Hi, y'all. Just real quick, apologies on being late. We went from one training to the next, but really wanted to be in this space. I'm Chris, or Kristina, trainer with Midwest Academy. Really have a lot of love for folks who are organizing in Georgia, especially around reproductive justice. And hey, I love this chat here. First time using this platform, so I'm just like, what's going on here? So anyways, but happy to be here. I won't take up too much time. But as a trainer, worked before at Midwest Academy, worked at an immigrant and worker rights organization, and then before that, worked for a national reproductive justice organization in called NAPOF, and spent a bunch of time in Georgia. And so I love my people in Georgia. Thanks again for having me.
Awesome. Now I'm gonna pass it to parent of the cutest baby on the screen,
And I
Asha.
sent her back away. That's the movement, baby. Little Taj. Crimson for the internet. So, right, maybe she should come back. But I just wanted to share SPARK's experience using the strategy chart. So currently we are working on a CPC campaign, crisis pregnancy centers, anti-abortion centers. They are places that often use deceptive tactics to lure people in and then convince them to not have an abortion or delay them by providing them false information to be able to receive the care that they need within an adequate amount of time. And we all know, especially in the South, that time is of the essence. So CPCs, crisis pregnancy centers. So our campaign right now is called Fake Clinics Suck. And we're really pushing for a truth in advertising policy, truth in healthcare advertising policy, because our visionary goal for the campaign is to ensure that everyone receives medically sound care. And so what we hope to achieve is to really make this big win for truth in advertising. It would make it so that these clinics couldn't provide ultrasounds for folks without there being a certified technician, that the people receiving or giving care to these clients are actually certified and informed, and that the information that they are giving you is not some sort of propaganda. And we do want to acknowledge that in certain communities, crisis pregnancy centers do provide resources for folks that are in need, baby clothes, free pregnancy tests. But if you're looking for an abortion, that is not the place to go. And so that's really what we're focusing on. So we have identified a key decision maker to win this campaign. And how we pick this decision maker is really to pick somebody who is in the middle. The key is to move the middle. There's no need to waste our energy on somebody that we know is on our side currently. We really want somebody who can convince other people who would probably be more skeptical to be on our side. And so we have a committee, a multi-org committee that's been doing research on the decision maker, looking at campaigns and legislation that are similar across the US. And we are coming up with this strategy and action plan based on our research and power analysis. And so we're also pulling in some of our base members to hop on this campaign with us. And I'm just really excited to see where this goes because I know that we can win this. But yes, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Asha. And I am going to kick it to Chris.
Thank you. Yeah, so Aimée-Josiane kind of gave the structure of what does it look like to build a strategic campaign and making sure that we do research on our decision makers. And then Asha came in here talking about how do we identify who the person we want to focus on, someone in the middle, right? And then doing the research on what is their power? How do we use our power to demonstrate that power towards that decision maker, to move them, right? To vote in our favor, to do what they need to do for our community. So how we build that power is building our base, right? Our core source of power is people, right? And so again, let's talk about that. What does that mean to build a base, right? It means that we invite new and more people to our groups in order to build power, right? We also think about who do we want to build power with and for what? If we're working on the fake clinic suck campaign, and then we identify the target, who are the people that would have leverage of power over that target, right? Especially what Aimée-Josiane said about making sure people who were organizing to demonstrate that power can be from the district of that legislator. Okay, it doesn't mean that we can't organize people who also might be on the outside, but recognizing it being critical to make sure we are building relationships and building a base that also have people who can have leverage over the target. Okay, and then when we have those moments of outcry, there's been so many times, right, where especially recently with Roe, where so many people are saying, you know what, I need to get involved. So how are we in that moment? We're doing the marches, we're doing the big actions where we can be in relationship with people, connect with people to build that deeper engagement, to join our campaign, to join our group, to come build relationships, be in community with people, because organizing, it's hard. And so how do we build that community to be with each other, to be in the struggle with each other, to build that strategy that Aimée-Josiane was talking about and Asha was talking about towards a longer term vision, right? We're not just going to stop at the fake clinics or the crisis pregnancy centers. We're going to push even more, right? So how do we build a base where we can talk about that and build that vision together? Okay. And so it really, I think about this in a way where we're building one-on-one relationships with people. I remember when I started in a group, we had just like a few people who were coming to our space. It was maybe like 3 or 4 people. And I was just like, oh my gosh, how are we going to be able to do this with just 3 or 4 people? But something I reflected on was how do I build strong relationships with those 3 or 4 people for us to really build trust with one another, to build that strategy and do that together, and also to be able to learn together as well, right? Because a lot of folks, for me, coming to organizing spaces and talking about strategy, I fell out of my element. I didn't finish college. I didn't always feel smart in those spaces. So to be in community with people where I could trust and we can learn together was so important. So important for our small group, because then we were like, you know what, this is a space where I want to build and I want to invite other people. So we had 4 people, but it was a strong group of 4 people. And then we were really intentionally inviting people to that space. And as soon as I knew it, there were 10, 15, 20, 100 people coming to that space because we built that infrastructure and the culture of that group to be building deep and authentic relationships. And that's how we build a base. There's a science part to it, right? Of how do we make sure we follow up with people in a timely manner. But there's also that art piece to it, like building relationships with people, right? Being genuinely curious about what do people care about, what's happening in people's lives, and how we can work together. I don't know if you can go to the next slide here. So I'm gonna turn it over to Asha to talk about what base building has looked like with SPARK Reproductive Justice Now.
Isn't this such a cute picture? Look at this community
It's a
building.
great picture.
So this picture right here, I'll start with this picture, but this is a photo from our LGBTQ, a barbecue that we had this summer for our fire campers to meet folks in the community. And so folks that are in fire come from around the US. They're not all based in Atlanta or Georgia itself. So we're really able to like expand this RJ knowledge and network across the country because all these folks are coming in and meeting each other and networking and all that good stuff. But a few ways that we do base building, right? Social media is really important right now, and folks are able to find us using hashtags, shared posts, and all that goodness. And then once they get pulled in with that, we're able to invite them to events like our monthly Spark Plug meetings, which are our membership meetings, where folks get the opportunity to do some political education, community building, and then learn about the campaigns that we have going on and where they can plug in with that. Like I mentioned before, we've had Black Sanctuary Space, where folks are able to really come in person and convene with one another to talk about political issues that are going on and really what it looks like for Black, queer, trans, and gender nonconforming folks, gender expansive folks to plug into this abortion conversation when a lot of the times when we talk about abortion, it's really coming from a cishet white lens. And so what does that conversation look like with folks that don't fit into that? And then, of course, following up with people, doing one-on-ones, lots of text messages. We have a signal chat to keep folks plugged in, drop jobs, meetup opportunities, training opportunities for folks. And then always, after these, we move folks to a call to action. And so I've got some for y'all. Woo, 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 woo. So first, next month, we're going to have an abortion plug training with Black Feminist Future. Chris has dropped the link in the chat for the interest form so that I can follow up with folks, vet them and everything. If you would like to participate, it is free. However, it is a Black only space. So we ask that all the participants please identify as a Black person. And then we have our virtual Spark Plug meetings. Our next meeting is in 2 weeks on the 30th. And then were you able to drop that link? I have, bam, yes, hit that link tree. You'll be able to sign in for our Spark Plug meetings. You don't need to pre-register. You can just click it. Oop. And then I know I have one more thing for y'all. So there's the collaborative. Bam. I have another thing, but it's okay. I didn't put that link. But if you are also interested in possibly canvassing with us for some get out the vote and voter registration, if you are going to do that, please use the abortion plug training link and in parentheses next to your name, put GOTV. And I love you forever. So if you're interested in doing some canvassing for some voter registration and get out the vote, use the abortion plug link and by your name in parentheses put GOTV, and I would appreciate that. And then last thing to plug in, we also have our Light Fellowship, and we're still accepting applications, and you can find that link in our link tree as well. So bam, I'm done now.
Woo! We love a call to action. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing. I just want to open up the space. Folks who are here, questions, any questions that we might have of each other. Just want to make some space and invite that dialogue.
Want to say we shared some tools like the strategy chart. If people are interested in getting connected to some of these tools, feel free to reach out to us. Maybe we can put our emails in the chat, Aimée-Josiane, if folks want to connect with us as well. Okay, Aimée-Josiane and myself, our emails are in the chat for folks. If folks are interested in learning more about any training or tools, we're happy to help and connect.
I keep waiting for people to speak up because I'm so used to Zoom.
Hey y'all. I don't think I have a question necessarily right now. But I do want to say we have about 18 minutes still in the session. So if you can't just come off mute, right, in this particular space. But if you do want to talk rather than type, just put in the chat on stage or let us know you want to come on stage so that you can just do that instead of typing it up. It's an option.
Thank you for that. And yeah, we can invite up to 3 people up here too to have some conversation on the stage. So, no pressure, but want to recognize folks that have shared in the chat so far. So Nandi, Sierra, Jordan, Catherine, Rula, Carolyn. Just inviting y'all to, ask questions. Oh, okay. We have a question. All right. From Jordan. Talk more about the Midwest Academy. Yes, of course. The Midwest Academy is, we are a national organization, despite the name. We are a training institute that trains grassroots organizers across the country from all sorts of, from across different types of movements. And we use a curriculum and some frameworks around organizing that have been developed by people who really learned some strong organizing lessons in the 60s and 70s coming out of radical and progressive movements of those times. And so we've used those strategies. They've been updated over time to, be even more explicit about some of the political analysis that we're pushing for. But yeah, we, in short, do a lot of trainings with organizers everywhere. And we are actually hoping to do a training. I'm really, really hoping that we do some trainings in Georgia specifically. I live here. This is where I want to see, change happen the most in my heart right now. So, yeah, definitely there are opportunities for individuals to join. But I find that, the trainings can be especially effective if it's a whole bunch of people from the same place doing the training together, because then we're doing, work in coalitions, and everybody, is skilled up and has shared language around what we're talking about when we say organizing, power analysis, strategy, etc. So I may have that's a little bit about the Midwest Academy. I don't know, Jordan, if you have any other questions, feel free to ask. And thanks for Chris put in the chat a link to our website. And thank you, Crystal, for loving the Midwest Academy's definition of organizing. Definitely invite you to share more. I can put that definition back on the screen as well.
Think for this space, also, if people have any particular challenges that you're dealing with in your organizing work, this is also a space that we want to open for people to learn from each other, and we can speak to them too. But yeah, if there's particular challenges that y'all want to talk through as well, let us know. Question from Sierra. So they don't have a really specific question about power analysis, but would love to learn more about it as a strategy. Do you want to speak to that, Aimée-Josiane? I'm also happy to.
Oh, no, go for it. I've been talking a lot.
Oh, sure. Yeah, good. Really key question, Sierra. I think for us at Midwest Academy, we, much of the really critical tools that we utilize, right, are the strategy chart, because we recognize that people, have are moving, taking action throughout times, have that passion, but then it also, how do we build a strategy that is based on that power analysis? Okay, it seems that analyzing various power structures is always a good place to begin when thinking about any issue. Yes, absolutely. And getting clear on who is the decision maker, right? And Asha said something really important earlier, that when we're working on, pushing a law or a policy, at what level, right? If it's on government level, what level? So if it's something on the city level, being able to analyze the city government and think about, okay, where are people at on this issue? And then if we find someone by doing the research, right, based on maybe how people have voted in the past, or what you know about them, or maybe we just ask them, we find out who's in the middle. Okay, so that's one way to figure out who do we want to focus in on for our decision maker. And then do research. That's the power analysis. of looking at our decision maker, or we also call them a target sometimes. Okay, and then that research, we might pull specific information about them. So sometimes it's helpful to know what's the personal information about this decision maker, but we have to think about what is the power of that decision maker. So if it's an elected official, what do they typically care about? If anyone wants to put it in the chat. What do they typically care about if they're an elected official? It's like quiz time. I don't know if y'all talked about this earlier. Yes, Crystal said it. Votes and getting reelected. Okay, yes, Sierra, reelection. So then we're going to look at their votes. How much power do they have? Right? They want to keep their job. So in finances too, yeah, finances, that money, that is the money that helps people get those votes. Thanks, Caroline. And so we look at that. We may look at what was the how many people voted for them, how much did they win by, right? If they won by a smaller margin that we thought, right? Maybe someone won by 1,000 votes. So we use that in our power analysis to think about, okay, do we have 1,000 people who could actually affect their election, right? How much has this elected official gotten in donations, right? That's that finances piece that Caroline talked about. So we will research all of this information. Maybe some of you have done this research before. All of this information is generally public. You go to your board of elections, right? Aimée-Josiane, I don't know if you can put in like board of elections link in there. A lot of this information, it's public. How much people won in their election. And also you can often find out how much people have gotten in donations. All of that is made to be public as well. And we do trainings on how to do that research, but I just encourage folks to try to Google to figure out those election results. And all of this goes in that strategy chart that Aimée-Josiane shared earlier under important information about the decision maker. Votes, donations, right? We might also put, if this decision maker goes to a particular church or, is a part of a particular community group. So those things we might pull that information, right? Yeah, going to the Secretary of State or county clerk. But we definitely want to look at their votes, the finances as well, especially if that's their power, right? That's the thing we know that they care about. Any follow-up questions about doing power analysis, either from Sierra or from other folks?
I see a question in a question in the question and answers box. It says, how important are optics, direct action, attention to pressuring policy change? And Crystal can elaborate on the question if needed. So how important are, the optics, the tactics, the attention? Does that facilitate change?
Yeah.
It's a really interesting question.
It is.
Did you want to say something,
I was just going to
Chris?
say, I don't know if Crystal wanted to expound upon that. Oh, she's up.
I can. I just wanted to make it as short as possible, but I also know that there was a lot in my head. So as an organizer, I I came into organizing work during the Black Lives Matter movement at the very beginning, before there was a name. And so I know in Atlanta, we did a lot of production around direct actions and just all of those things, and working with other organizations. It kind of, there were certain people who did the demands and like all of the very specific technical things, and then there were folks who did the planning of the direct actions, and then there were folks who did the work of like getting that stuff out, right? And just seeing that they're all kind of different things, and noticing that that's not really how RJ has moved, at least not since I've been in it. I'm wondering what that could look like what direct actions and those big productions and the optics of direct actions could look like in pushing policy change for reproductive justice.
Great. Thank you for elaborating on that. So two things come to mind based on what you just shared. The first is that there's something really powerful, and I think Chris mentioned this in the slides around base building, is that, there are moments where there are moments of high energy, high action, of like, people really wanting to come out and register, anger at a particular issue. And so just like recognizing that there are some of those kind of tactical moments that a group might decide to use to their advantage to base build. But I think what you're talking about, Crystal, makes you think a lot more about, how do groups plan strategic actions that might not get, as big, like to the scale. We might not be getting 1,000 people rallies, but it doesn't mean that the tactic in itself, the action, is not going to be effective in moving a decision maker. The other piece is that the thing about organizing is that it's important what we're doing, right? Like it's important that we win. It's important that we're, being effective in the kinds of tactics that we're pushing for, but it's also important how we're building. Because if the goal is to build, this like long lasting organizations that can struggle for justice, then we have to think about the leadership development opportunities of people being able to actually participate in creating tactics. One of the things that I love about the Midwest Academy strategy chart is that I think it can be a tool that kind of equalizes people's contributions, so that when we get into tactics, there are some folks who are saying, well, I'm going to just wait for the core team to decide what the tactic is. But we're actually asking, organizers are asking questions of the whole group. What are the tactics that we can utilize based on what we know about the decision maker, based on what we know the decision maker cares about? What are the tactics that we need to utilize? And are those tactics going to actually result in moving the decision maker? Because the other thing too, and I'm a socialist, I'm a Black feminist, I'm an anti-capitalist. I mean, that's whatever. And I know that, if I go and try to mobilize every one of my neighbors to action, a very few of them are going to be mobilized because they believe in socialism and Black feminism as a vision. So people want to see that if they're going to give their time, if they're going to give their energy, that it's actually resulting in meaningful changes. That's why I'm really careful about, like how are we actually engaging people in tactics? If we're asking people to come out to a rally every weekend for a prolonged amount of months, we might be depleting, their energy, their limited time and life energy when we could be actually utilizing their presence in a more strategic way in some targeted direct actions, that they also get a hand in planning with us as organizers. So just wanted to talk about tactics, because a lot of times when people think of organizing, they think about the tactics. They're like, organizing is those people who are like, let's go get them. Talk to the decision makers, the people that you see on the news, sometimes getting arrested for civil disobedience. But that is not the only way to be effective in actually using your tactics. I want to invite Chris to chime in, because Chris put a couple of things in the chat, I think, that are resonating.
Yeah, I'll just repeat them. I think we have to wrap up soonish here. But I think in terms of the tactics, building of what Aimée-Josiane was saying, the tactics need to be strategic, right? That we're demonstrating power, and it matters who's taking on that tactic. Does our decision maker care about the people, about who are doing that tactic? Meaning, are the constituents of that elected official, right? Could they actually vote this person out, right? And then depending on how many people, size of the tactic is, if you're going to do petitions or a rally, who's doing it, and then how many people are doing it, and does that number somehow correlate to what we know the power of the target or decision maker is? So what would be a number of people to take action that would essentially pose a threat towards that target, towards their power, right? So just wanted to echo what I was saying in the chat.
Thank you. That's a great point. All right. I'm looking at Crystal and folks. It looks like we're out of time, or just at time.
Yes, we are just at time, and we are going to go ahead and start moving folks over to the main session. Thank y'all
Thanks,
so
y'all.
much.
Wonderful